The city of Miami is proud to play a leading role in the 2021 Climate Adaptation Summit. Known as the Magic City, Miami is an ever-evolving global hub that celebrates its rich diversity of people, cultures, food, music, and so much more. We're a center for international trade, banking, hospitality, real estate development, and transportation. And our emergent tech and startup space is growing fast. All of this magic is set against a stunning tropical backdrop of aqua waters, palm trees, and abundant natural beauty. As Miami looks to its future, adaptation and resilience efforts are at the very forefront. We're already well underway developing resilient infrastructure through our Miami Forever Bond program. We're forging valuable partnerships with regional and global adaptation leaders. And our resilience professionals are engaging Miamians every step of the way to ensure our community's diverse voices are heard. The City of Miami stands together with all participating in this year's summit, united in our commitment to climate adaptation and confident in our ability to build a brighter future for all. And now, we bring you live to Miami City Hall.
Welcome to the Climate Adaptation Summit's anchor event on resilient cities, broadcasting from the beautiful city of Miami. My name is Irela Bagué, and on behalf of Miami and our partners, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the Global Commission on Adaptation, and World Resources Institute, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Today's program will highlight the importance of building resilient cities to reduce the threats resulting from climate change, droughts, heat waves, landslides, storms, and especially in coastal areas, floods. We will hear from leaders across the globe as they share best practices and launch approaches for coordinated action to build more resilient and equitable cities worldwide. All of you watching can join in on the conversation on social media. Share your comments and favorite quotes by using the Summit hashtag Adaptation Summit and Miami's hashtag ResilientMIA. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mayor Francis Suarez, the 33rd Mayor of Miami and a Commissioner on the United Nations Global Commission on Adaptation. Mayor Suarez has championed climate adaptation technologies, building practices, and economic policies across government. He serves as the second Vice President of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and was just elected by his peer American mayors to serve as the President for the 2022-23 term.
As host for the Climate Adaptation Summit's Resilient Cities event, we warmly welcome all of the participants to Miami. Miami is a water-driven and water-dependent city. We lie between the Atlantic Ocean and the Everglades. And while our city has developed and grown, we have learned to coexist with our natural environment. We do not believe that this is a matter of the environment versus the economy. The environment is the economy. The environmentalist Paul Hawken said, "We have the capacity to create a remarkably different economy, one that can restore ecosystems and protect the environment while bringing forth innovation, prosperity, meaningful work, and true security." And that is what we're doing here today. Cities must take steps now to be more resilient and reduce the threats resulting from climate change, droughts, heat waves, landslides, storms, and especially in coastal areas like Miami, hurricanes and floods. We can and must adapt to specific climate change impacts we consider as part of adaptation: extreme heat, intensifying storms, floods, and rising sea levels. While every city has unique challenges, we all want our cities and communities to be more resilient. Our adaptation efforts will be more successful through an integrated and inclusive approach. We recognize a distinguished group of participants from across the globe who have been successful coordinating adaptation efforts to build more resilient, and we look forward to sharing ideas and best practices in our Resilient Cities event. Earlier in the day, I participated in Climate Adaptation Summit's Mayors Forum, where we presented the joint statement to Ban Ki-moon urging cities to accelerate adaptation efforts as part of the Decade of Action, encouraging participants to think global and act local. We must adapt, we must act, and we must accelerate. By integrating our city with our climate, we now have an opportunity to reform our economies and lay the groundwork for future decades of economic prosperity and social responsibility. Cities will play a central role in adapting, testing, and expanding on these investments. To help our cities recover from COVID-19 and build an adaptive future, we need to focus on solutions that can deliver immediate relief and tangible benefits to our most vulnerable citizens. We also know that a Miami that lasts forever must be a Miami that welcomes everyone. We have developed our Miami Forever Climate Ready Plan with 5 goals that guide our adaptation efforts. Ensure decisions are data-driven, engage residents, protect the waterfront, invest in resilient infrastructure, and build adaptive neighborhoods. We have enabled adaptation through investments made possible by our Miami Forever bond, which invests in infrastructure and inclusion, economic growth, and environmental adaptation. Implementing the Miami for Everyone Affordable Housing Plan, we are introducing the Keep Miami Safe initiative, providing tools for our residents and homeowners to assess their buildings' climate resilience and ability to adapt to climate change, and then take action to improve them. We are committed to a broad-based program that strengthens and scales climate adaptive planning, zoning, and building code reforms, builds water-resilient cities that endure flooding and the rise of water-based superstorms, advocate for more flexibility in funding for climate adaptive infrastructure funding, and expands our knowledge network on climate adaptive programs and broad-based economic development policies. As the upcoming president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, it is an honor to join mayors and civic leaders from around the world on this project. Our efforts will be successful through the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now program. Our main goal is to accelerate adaptation in 1,000 cities by 2030 with a comprehensive package of free market and nature-based solutions. Because an increasing amount of the world's population now live in cities, the focus of this program will be to leverage successful climate adaptive policies in cities as a pathway for further investment and expansion of climate adaptive policies. I look forward to hearing what other cities and organizations are doing as well, beginning with my friend and fellow mayor Dan Gelber from the city of Miami Beach, who will discuss some great initiatives the city has taken on to become more resilient.
Thank you, Mayor Suarez, for your leadership. Joining him to welcome you to Miami are the 2 other mayors who make up the Resilient 305 partnership. First, we have Mayor Dan Gelber, who has been mayor of Miami Beach since 2017. He was born in Miami Beach and raised to believe in public service, serving as a federal prosecutor, state representative, senator, and now mayor.
The waters are rising. About that, there is no dispute. My city understands this more than most. While we are a world-famous destination known for our beautiful beaches and love of arts and culture, we are also a place that has experienced sunny day flooding. As a barrier island built atop porous limestone, my city has had to not merely talk about climate change, we have had to meet that challenge head on with action. Now, some have called us a canary in the mine shaft. So let me tell you the lessons we are already learning. First, this is an entirely surmountable challenge. There are solutions and adaptations that work. To address our flooding challenges, we are in the midst of an ambitious program to raise our roads and convert our traditional gravity-based stormwater system to a pump-based system. We have also updated our building codes so that future development accounts for these environmental changes. Importantly, in the areas where we have delivered these engineering upgrades and solutions, the flooding has dramatically been reduced. We are unquestionably drier, and our community's swift action has already seen financial returns on these environmental investments. FEMA has improved our flood insurance rating, resulting in premium discounts for our residents. And when our community's general obligation bonds went to market in 2018, we received a higher credit rating and a lower interest rate than anticipated, partly on the strength of our proactive climate mitigation efforts. So we know we are on the right track. Second, our efforts must be informed by science and supported by the people. As we have implemented programs, we have also constantly challenged ourselves and pressure tested our approach. In 2017, we asked the Rockefeller Foundation to support an audit of our efforts through a top-to-bottom review conducted by the Urban Land Institute. We also regularly bring in world-class experts who can inform our efforts with the best information and science available. And we have not been shy about revising what we are doing to be consistent with these suggestions. If we are to ask the public to support these programs financially and endure the inevitable disruption, they must believe in the program. Our resiliency bond passed with overwhelming support from our taxpayers. Finally, no community can go it alone. Rising waters do not know political or municipal boundaries. They just rise. So it's heartening to know that our efforts are supported and informed by leaders next door and nearby. My sibling, Mayor Suarez in Miami, and good friend, County Mayor Levine Cava, are not competitors or spectators. They are full partners. Through county efforts in our Resilient 305 program and regional efforts through the Southeast Florida Climate Compact, we have learned best practices and drawn upon the experience of those facing similar challenges. Other groups like Resilient Cities Network, the Rockefeller and Bloomberg Foundations have all pitched in with their expertise. Now, noticeably absent from our partners have been the state and federal government, who have done next to nothing to lead or even support these local and regional efforts. I do, however, believe that the new administration is focused on and prepared to join this fight. Obviously, none of this is to say that we are ready to declare success. The thing about resiliency is it doesn't have an endpoint. It's an ongoing journey. But like any important journey, it's best done with partners and with a seriousness of purpose, and always with an optimism that our sunniest days are ahead of us.
Thank you, Mayor Gelber, for sharing the tremendous work going on in Miami Beach. Next, I'd like to introduce my boss, Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, who was elected to be Miami-Dade County's first ever female mayor in November of 2020, following a 40-year career advocating for South Florida's families. She oversees a metropolitan government with more than 28,000 employees, serving nearly 3 million residents with a $9 billion annual budget.
Thank you, Irela, for that introduction. To all of today's participants around the world, thank you for joining us for the 2021 Climate Adaptation Summit. The time to act is definitely now. I'm honored to speak right after City of Miami Beach Mayor Dan Gelber and the City of Miami Mayor Francis Suarez, who is the incoming president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Together, we three mayors and our entire South Florida network of partners offer proof positive that working together is the right way to go. We achieve our shared goals much more quickly and effectively as a team than if any one of us tried to go it alone. And this has been especially true in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and climate change, along with the multiple social and economic inequalities resulting from this short-term shock and long-term stressor. As mayor of Miami-Dade County, I work with the mayors and constituents of 34 municipalities. Our region of South Florida has always faced the threat of hurricanes, so we have long-standing experience in partnering with each other. Now we are expanding on that earlier expertise to build back better in the face of climate change and COVID-19. And we already have a concrete roadmap for ways to do so. 4 years ago, Miami-Dade County joined the cities of Miami and Miami Beach to become the first regional partnership in the Rockefeller Foundation's 100 Resilient Cities initiative. That collaboration led us to create a Resilient 305 strategy. This plan serves as the overarching conceptual umbrella that helps us coordinate the different aspects of our response so that all of us are working in unison toward one common purpose. Just 10 days ago, Mayor Gelber, Mayor Suarez, and I released the Year 1 Progress Report for the Resilient 305 strategy. We're pleased to share with you the news that our community is well on its way to advancing the 59 action items in that plan. These specific actions range from restoring the health of our beautiful Biscayne Bay and developing an inclusive economy, to ensuring effective pandemic communications and redeveloping our public housing in ways that are more resilient from both an environmental and a socioeconomic perspective. To more effectively curb the spread of COVID-19, we have relied on a larger network of partners that extends beyond Miami-Dade County into Monroe County south of us and Broward and Palm Beach counties to our north. For this work, we have relied on partnerships we have expanded on thanks to more than 12 years of involvement with the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact. This multi-jurisdictional approach to solving the biggest challenges we face will be instrumental in helping us build back better as we confront COVID-19 and climate change. Key among this work is our county's sea level rise strategy, which will soon be released. It outlines multiple solutions to coastal and inland inundation, and it includes approaches such as raising buildings and roads and expanding blueways and green spaces. I hope these specific examples offer insights into what has worked in Miami-Dade County and throughout South Florida. We need to expand these types of collaborations across the globe to ensure that we can meet the existential challenges ahead of us. In closing, I want to endorse the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now joint statement being issued today at the Climate Adaptation Summit. Miami-Dade County is truly committed to this level of worldwide cooperation. I would now like to hand the floor back over to Irela Bagué. She is not only our moderator this afternoon, but also our recently appointed Chief Bay Officer. In this first ever role in Miami-Dade County, she now oversees the preservation and restoration of our exquisite Biscayne Bay, which really is a world treasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Levine Cava, for highlighting the collaboration within South Florida to make the region more resilient. To truly gain momentum, however, requires involvement of cities across the United States with a united effort at the national level, enabled by strong leadership and persistence. Representing more than 1,400 cities in the United States, we have Mayor Greg Fisher on the line, who is the current president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. He has served as Louisville's 50th mayor since 2010 and has set a bold agenda promoting equity and opportunity for all, especially as the nation's cities rebuild their economies in the wake of COVID-19 and a renewed calls for racial justice.
Well, thank you, and it's an honor to join you. Thanks to Mayor Suarez for his leadership and partnership in the United States Conference of Mayors. Mayor Suarez is going to be an outstanding president of the conference in 2022, just as he's an outstanding mayor on national and global issues, including sustainability. I want to thank also the UN Global Commission on Adaptation and our global partners for making this gathering possible. Like all of you, I assume, I was deeply gratified when President Biden announced that the United States government would rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement. That's the right move and the right message to send to our country and the world about the importance of addressing this climate emergency. But it's also worth noting that while the federal government under the previous administration left the Paris Agreement, America's mayors and America's cities stayed in the agreement. The United States Conference of Mayors represents mayors across the country who maintained our commitment to the principles and goals outlined in the Paris Agreement. That's because we directly see the impact of pollution and environmental degradation and climate change in our cities. We see how it disproportionately impacts our less resourced communities, in particular, our communities of color. And that's another reason why we have to address this crisis with what Dr. King's famous call was for the fierce urgency of now. And just as our fight for racial justice overlaps with our fight for sustainability, as Mayor Suarez said, there is no separating the need for a healthy environment with the need for a healthy economy. We need both. Just like we need clean air and clean water, they go hand in hand. And America's cities have shown outstanding leadership on climate change. Last summer, the United States Conference of Mayors issued the Mayor's 2020 Vision, an American Breakthrough. It's a platform of 10 principles inspired by the conference's bipartisan focus on creating a safe, sustainable, and equitable future through investing in America's communities. Those priorities include building modern, resilient infrastructure to address climate change, promote environmental justice, and enhance opportunity and productivity. So as we look to rebuild and reimagine our economy post-COVID-19, we have to amplify the opportunity we have to encourage entrepreneurs in our communities who are seizing the moment, developing new technologies, businesses, and partnerships to face the climate emergency in ways that help us grow our economy and preserve our environment, while also helping to find ways to help workers that have been displaced, workers like farmers, coal miners, and others whose livelihoods have been directly affected by climate change. I'll close by saying that cities across our country and across the world, we got to move faster than ever to move forward. So I urge my fellow mayors, as well as the leaders of businesses and schools and houses of worship and households, to do more and support initiatives like investing in green jobs and living wages that address climate change, increasing renewable energy options for residents, particularly those most burdened by energy costs, and building out the infrastructure for electrification of our transportation systems. We've got to lean into this moment, all of us together. We have a chance to change the future, and we must do it. History is going to inevitably look back on 2020 as a low point in America. Let's make 2021 a turning point, the year where we commit to working together, rebuilding our economy, rebuilding our future in a way that is sustainable for each and every one of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and to all the mayors who spoke just now and this morning for committing to climate action and adaptation. To discuss the launch of the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now program, I'd like to welcome back Global Commission on Adaptation Commissioner Mayor Francis Suarez.
Thank you, Mayors Levincava, Gelber, and Fisher for participating in today's event, and thank you for your leadership in advancing climate adaptation in your cities and county. Mayors have many responsibilities, but one of our most pressing responsibilities is to protect and strengthen our cities for our residents to ensure a climate resilient future. Climate change is not a local issue, but a global challenge that every mayor across the globe must face every day. Cities and urban areas, many of them coastal regions, are home to half of the world's population, with currently 880 million people living in urban communities that lack sufficient infrastructure. By 2050, costs of climate change impact to urban areas will have risen to more than $1 trillion. Rising seas and greater storm surges could force hundreds of millions of people in coastal areas from their homes, with costs of coastal urban reaching the trillions of dollars. Cities now are on the front line of COVID-19, with urban residents facing devastating health and economic impacts. Urban poor, migrants, and low-wage workers are often the most affected in both urban and rural areas. Without a plan for climate adaptation, the effects of climate change may depress growth in global agricultural yields up to 30% by 2050, triggering a widespread negative economic impact, and in turn could even push more than 100 million people within developing countries below the poverty line by 2030. By working together as a global community, we can achieve our goal to build more resilient and equitable cities. We must accelerate climate adaptation efforts now. The need to invest in multi-benefit solutions is more important than ever. Adaptation, if done right, will lead to better growth and development, save lives, protect nature, reduce inequalities, and create opportunities. Cities will play a central role in adapting, testing, and expanding on these investments. To help our cities recover from COVID-19 and build an adaptive future, we need solutions that can deliver immediate relief and tangible benefits to our most vulnerable citizens. The 1,000 Cities Adapt Now program provides a three-part phase plan of action that is politically, economically, and environmentally sustainable. Our main goal is to accelerate adaptation in 1,000 cities by 2030 with a comprehensive package of free market and nature-based solutions. Because an increasing amount of the world population now lives in cities, the focus of this program will be to leverage successful climate adaptive policies in cities as a pathway for further investment and expansion of climate adaptive policies. Let me now introduce two mayors at the forefront of this effort, Mayor Ahmed Abu Taleb of Rotterdam and Anne Hidalgo of Paris.
Molnar, co-lead of the city's action track for the Global Commission on Adaptation and Chief Resilience Officer for the City of Rotterdam. You've been keeping tabs on the Climate Adaptation Summit so far. Can you tell us a bit about what's happened today so far?
Yes, thank you very much, Irila. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. First of all, I have to apologize because you have to do it with me instead of Mayor Abu Taleb. He just an hour ago had to rush to Rotterdam due to some corona-related safety issues, you could say. Can you hear me clearly, Irila? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So let me briefly give you an update of what happened today on behalf of Mayor Abu Taleb. It started during the opening ceremony, where the mayor was able to hand over for the heads of states the so-called 1,000 Cities Adapt Now program, of which everybody in this interesting session has been working on very hard the few months behind us. So that was a good and inspiring moment. Followed by the Mayor's Forum that had been broadcasting after the opening ceremony, where we discussed the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now program together with leading mayors of influential cities, you could say. And we were able to present the same program to Excellency Mr. Ban Ki-moon, the 8th Secretary General of the United Nations. And in that forum, it was, well, you could say one takeaway is that all city leaders were urging to work on a resilient recovery. So to work on well, an economical recovery, but including adaptation and green and justice and equity, which I think is crucial. So all these leading mayors endorsed the 1,000 Cities Can Adapt Now program. And let me see, I have to look at my notes and improvise a little bit. Oh yeah, okay, so we all agreed, all these cities agreed to continue, of course, to work on adaptation in the city, but also to share this with other cities and to contribute to scale up and to speed up. And there were a few things mentioned, and now I want to pick them up and then I can wrap up. So one thing is they all agreed upon all cities need to invest in so-called multi-benefit solutions and also develop, there is a need for overall integrated climate adaptation strategies. So that's, I think, good that in this program to help 1,000 cities, there's also a focus on transformative capacity building, you could say. Second, all cities are working and developing in the city and developing and investing in new infrastructure. So it's crucial not to develop, as Henk Oving says, new stupid infrastructure. We have to do this inclusive with adaptation. Do this from the beginning. Third, it's good to invest in nature-based solutions and to try to live with nature instead of fighting against it, you could say. And finally, but not least, very, very important to work on adaptation in your city in an inclusive way and in a just way, because it's often the vulnerable communities that are hit the hardest. So finally, it's good, I think, to emphasize that these 4 leading partners are crucial. I think so the GCA, the Global Center on Adaptation, World Resources Institute, UN Habitat, and the Resilient Cities Network. I think they did a good job together with a lot of partners, together with you commissioners, Mayor Hidalgo and Suarez. Thank you very much for that. And we think that we have been able to create a kind of a delivery mechanism with this program, and that we can have impact. So it's also a call for funders to join this program and more partners, because together we can make a difference and create acceleration of adaptation in cities the coming decade. Thank you.
My city, Rotterdam, together with the GCA, will continue to share our experiences, and that will include innovative, multi-functional solutions, but also the way we designed our integrated adaptation strategies together with the so-called water boards, the oldest democracy in the Netherlands, the business community, but also with the citizens. And recently, this city decided to start with a major project, 7 separate projects, green projects, including huge parks, to deliver the answer simultaneously on COVID-19 by providing new job opportunities, but also to create green spaces for water in the city. And we afford a budget of some 300 million euros to do that.
Thanks to your work, cities around the world are rising to the challenge of protecting their citizens. From Addis Ababa, Bogota, Kampala to Berlin and Brussels, new bike lanes have been created to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission and decrease congestion. If we work together, I believe we can prepare our cities for a warmer future and create healthy living spaces where people and biodiversity can thrive. Distinguished mayors, GCA stands ready to work with you on this critical agenda. Let us work together to make this world and these cities of the world much, much better and sustainable.
While we are separated by oceans, continents, and time zones, we're all here as a human family, working to save and to secure our common home. We now confront the proverbial perfect storm of environmental, social, political, and economic crises that require immediate attention and swift action. Debate is no longer a matter of the environment versus the economy. The environment is the economy. The environment shapes the strength of our political systems and the resilience of our societies. We must adapt, we must act, and we must accelerate.
We haven't seen blue skies for many, many years. And in this pandemic, we adopted large-scale social restriction or social distancing. And what happened? We reduced office activities into 25%. And for many, many weeks, we experienced blue sky.
The worries about the end of the century are a luxury for people that worry about the end of the month. And we should realize that when we talk about climate adaptations. And that's why I always focus on broad collective measures that really make a difference. And I try to avoid any form of culpabilization because it simply does not work.
So there are a number of things that the City of Athens is doing as we speak. Beginning with our resilience strategy for 2030, we are moving forward, making very clear that there may well be a project that's too big, but there is no project that's too small.
The extensive community engagement in the regeneration planning process that's involved has also helped us develop an approach to coastal hazard adaptation planning, which is being rolled out now. We're working with 23 priority communities in coastal and low inland areas to develop a shared understanding of the science and finding locally appropriate adaptation approaches that suit each community. In terms of funding, there is no question that a New Zealand central government will be required to come to the table, especially in the case of managed retreat from highly vulnerable areas. However, at least our earthquake experience has provided a model to work from.
Adaptation of our cities starts today. We are running out of time and must move faster in our ecological transition to face the impact of climate change. In Paris, we are already experiencing more frequent heat waves, extreme flooding, and heavy rains. To this end, we need to get all the players around the table, scientists, businesses, citizens, NGOs, to share the solutions, the many solutions deployed.
We all know that any global solution without cities' participation could not exist, and cities must immediately take action. As an inspiring city aiming to find global solutions on the issues on the Climate Adaptation Summit and C40's agenda, we desire to take a more active role and become a leader. We all need to adapt now because tomorrow will be too late.
It's so exciting to see all these mayors worldwide working towards a shared goal. As we've seen, the joint statement and the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now global program was launched and handed to co-chair of the Global Commission on Adaptation and 8th Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, in attendance of 15 mayors. Mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, who is also Global Commission on Adaptation Commissioner, joined the Mayors Forum earlier today with the following address.
Thank you for your invitation and thank you for organizing this forum despite the constraints of the health situation. Adaptation of our cities starts today. We are running out of time and must move faster in our ecological transition to face the impact of climate change. In Paris, we are already experiencing more frequent heat waves, extreme flooding, and heavy rains. To this end, we need to get all the players around the table, scientists, businesses, citizens, NGOs, to share the solutions, the many solutions deployed. To advance, we depend on effective action tailored to the local situation. In Paris, we are implementing urban cooling islands to guarantee that all Parisians can enjoy a park or a shaded area near their home. We also intervene in schools for the children and their families with the greening of playgrounds. We have to learn from each other. For example, Rotterdam, where the concept of the sponge city to reduce the impact of floods has been developed. We will also need a large mobilization. For this reason, I am proud to count on the 20,000 Parisian climate volunteers. We will require funding, so I encourage governments, public development banks and foundations to contribute up to 100 million euros per year engaged during the COP21 in Paris. This year, COP26 in Glasgow will push us forward. I strongly endorse the action of the Global Center for Adaptation and the joint declaration proposed today to reinforce solidarity between cities and our actions. Paris stands by your side.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioner Hidalgo. And now to talk about the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now global program and the path forward, I'd like to introduce two gentlemen overseeing the initiative. Andrew Steer is President and CEO of the World Resources Institute, a global research into action organization dedicated to promoting economic development while protecting the natural environment. Patrick Verkooijen is CEO for the Global Center on Adaptation. He is recognized globally for mobilizing stakeholders and delivering scaled-up actions that address climate change.
Let me add my word of welcome to this important event on city resilience. And what a pleasure it is to share the stage with three such distinguished mayors. Thank you, Mayor Suarez, for hosting this event. And thank you, Mayor Abul Tayeb, for announcing this morning the very, very important 1,000 Cities Adapt Now campaign. And thank you, Mayor Hidalgo, for the remarkable things you've been doing in Paris and as leader of the C40 as well. And a pleasure to follow my good friend, Patrick Verkooijen, head of the Global Center for Adaptation. Patrick and we at the World Resources Institute over the last 2 years have been managing partners for the Global Commission on Adaptation. And that was set up 2 years ago because adaptation simply wasn't getting the attention it needed. And as we went on in our work, we really realized that cities were the very heart of the issue. Cities where there's the most innovation. Cities are where there is the greatest challenges. People living very closely together, lots of vested interests. And if one wants to move towards resilience, one needs an integrated approach. We also focused on sort of the economics of adaptation. Most leaders have tended to think that adaptation is about investing now to stop something bad happening a long time in the future. But we discovered that actually, in addition to that, investment in adaptation can make very good things possible in the short term. And investing $1 smartly will lead to $3 to $10 in economic returns. So this is a wonderful opportunity. Too many leaders in the past have assumed that the future is simply a continuation of the past. Well, we now know, in fact, that the future is no longer going to be like the past. So instead of smooth curves and straight lines, we're going to have jagged edges and kinks in the future. And so we need to think quite differently. And of course, the great thing about cities right now is that there's huge experimentation. in poor countries as well as rich countries. Go to Africa, go to a place like Kibera, for example. Kibera in Kenya, and you will find citizens, the community, focusing on flood control, focusing together with the local government on garbage control to make their future more resilient. Go to Freetown, Sierra Leone. Freetown now, they call themselves Tree Town. Why? Because they had such serious problems of land erosion and hillside erosion. They planted 1 million trees, and that's citizens together with local government. And of course, the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now is all about learning from each other. It's going to focus on resilient water management. It's going to focus on nature-based solutions within cities, and it's focus on capacity building to do things differently in the future. So for us, at the World Resources Institute, it's a great honor to be part of this, and we're going to help drive this forward, not only through this all-important year, but right into this all-important decisive decade. So it's a great honor to be with you, and we look forward to the fascinating presentations and discussion we're going to have in the hour ahead. Thank you very much indeed.
The central message of the Climate Adaptation Summit is that there is an urgency to accelerate adaptation globally. This can only be achieved through bold actions, creating impact on the ground in cities. And as climate change is accelerating and cities continue to grow, we also have to speed up urban adaptation. We strongly believe that cities need climate risk-based urban planning. And that's exactly what the Global Center on Adaptation stands for. That's why the launch of this 1,000 Cities Adapt Now global program is crucial. To accelerate urban adaptation, it's crucial to strengthen forces. That's why I'm so excited and happy that GCA, together with WRI, led the establishment of a unique coalition with UN Habitat, Resilient Cities Network, and partners such as Slum Dwellers International and Deltares. With this coalition, we can create a defragmented offer, build capacity in cities at scale. That is the paradigm shift. Together, we can create more synergy by combining our programs, networks, and also funding. By making use of complementary skills, experience, and existing networks and cities of the coalition partners, GCA especially will focus on the practical capacity building in cities. By developing and implementing the so-called Cities Adaptation Accelerator, crucial components of this package of measures are a range of assessments focused on risks, governance, and finances, followed by services to help cities to develop an integrated adaptation strategy, resulting in action plans to start implementing. I also want to call partners to support this global program, which will create impact and scale in cities for the coming decade, with focus on the most vulnerable in cities worldwide.
Thank you to Andrew and Patrick in providing your insights to the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now program. In the upcoming block, let's look a little deeper at two key building blocks of the program: strategic solutions and capacity building. As Andrew and Patrick discussed, a key element of the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now global program is to develop a coalition to share ideas and solutions that work and consider how they can be scaled at the regional or global level to be even more effective. Our next group of speakers have been successful in implementing adaptation strategies and building capacity within their communities to adapt for the future. They'll discuss opportunities to coordinate and collaborate at the local, national, and global level and create momentum focused on addressing issues of the vulnerable and poor, addressing urban water resilience, and the use of nature-based solutions to adapt to climate change. Let's begin with a look at the issue of urban water resilience, which is a tremendous challenge within the African continent. To moderate a discussion among leaders building capacity to urban water challenges in Africa, I'd like to welcome Betsy Otto, the Global Director for the Water at the World Resources Institute.
Thank you so much, Irela. I'm really excited to talk with two distinguished speakers about this issue we've just heard a lot about from mayors. That is the issue of how water is affecting urban resilience. So I'm joined today by Jürgen Sadler, the Director General for International Development Policy and Climate in the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, or BMZ, and also Franny Lautier, the senior partner at Southbridge Group and CEO of Southbridge Investments. Southbridge is an investment bank providing Pan-African financial and advisory solutions. Welcome to you both. We had hoped to have Parks Tao, the former mayor of City of Johannesburg, but he's been called away, unfortunately, by a family emergency. But lovely to have you both with us. Thank you. Just a little bit maybe of frame setting here. We know, we've heard about it. Water is an urgent issue around the globe. And it's really, if we think about a place like Africa, it's an existential issue for Africa, excuse me. If we think about Africa and we think about the unique set of water-related challenges that it's facing in the next 20 years, we have to consider that, for example, Africa's urban population will double. Its demand for water will quadruple. And growth pressures and unmanaged land use changes are going to compromise natural water systems. We're already seeing that. Adding to those pressures, climate change is, of course, already impacting Africa as well. Increased variability in rainfall, more extreme events like droughts and floods. In the past few years, cities in Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Ivory Coast, Morocco, Ghana, South Africa, all have faced severe and historic water shortages, similar to Cape Town's near day zero situation. So what does it mean to build urban water resilience? How do we address these converging challenges? Well, first, what it means is that communities become better able to withstand the extremes, the bigger storms and droughts, through disaster preparedness, through protection of natural infrastructure, forested watersheds, groundwater recharge areas, wetlands, and through the design and development of more water-sensitive infrastructure. It also means that we have to take a more systemic approach that brings together an understanding of the demand side on water with water resource management, and also thinking about how urban growth and climate adaptation factor into this. And cities have to think beyond their own boundaries. To drive change at the local level, we also need to understand what the competition for water is, what's happening in land use in the region, and how are we thinking about national policy? How can those various efforts align across those different levels of government? We see at WRI sort of 4 key pathways to quote unquote getting water right in places like Africa. And the first is just to really rethink how cities and urban infrastructure are being planned. How are we meeting our water needs? How are we thinking about things like natural infrastructure in source watersheds? Prioritizing, of course, the most vulnerable communities to ensure equitable access to safe water and sanitation. In doing so in a climate resilient way is more important than ever. The pandemic of the past year has shown how essential this is, and we must address that as a second pathway. We then, as a third pathway, have to align policies and investment across sectors and across those different levels of government, as I've mentioned. And then I think there's an incredible opportunity to scale initiatives through innovative partnerships. And I think we'll hear more about that, whether through financing or action on the ground. In fact, WRI has launched a program to try to do exactly this with funding from BMZ to work in 6 African cities with partners to first understand and characterize city-specific water systems, to highlight the factors that contribute to the resilience of city water systems, then to work with stakeholders to develop an action plan of key interventions and look for the financing and other implementation strategies to bring them to reality. So with that, I'd like to introduce now Jürgen. Your work at BMZ has focused on providing development assistance to African stakeholders on urban water resilience, among many other development issues. What do you see as the critical water and climate change challenges facing African cities? And what is BMZ's approach to addressing those challenges?
Thanks a lot, Betsy, and thanks the organizers for inviting me. I will speak on behalf of my ministry. And first of all, I would really like to congratulate our US colleagues, the mayors, and all the colleagues there for rejoining the Paris Agreement. We are very, very happy to have you back, and that's a big opportunity. I have been executive director at the World Bank, and I can tell you it has been an uphill battle for 4 years when it came to these kind of questions. So thanks a lot, everybody. And we know all, I mean, Betsy already addressed some of the issues, so I don't want to repeat. We know that urbanization is progressing in most parts of the world. And already today, the majority of the world's population lives in cities. Africa is probably the most rapidly urbanizing continent. You have mentioned that point. It is estimated that by 2050, Africa's cities will be home of an additional 950 million people. And a crucial question will be, how will this process of urbanization take place? I've seen cities in China where they planned, they built the infrastructure, and then the people moved in. In Africa, what we can see, it's different. It's mushrooming, and then you have all the problems you can imagine. Therefore, urban planning is important, infrastructure investment is important, and now we have an opportunity, and this nicely links to our current debate on building back better. We will see fiscal space, which comes through additional aid, but perhaps also debt relief, and we have to use this opportunity to invest in those kind of issues. Building back better in terms of infrastructure, in terms of urban development. And it's quite clear, climate change does not make it easier. For example, in terms of basic water services. Already now, a growing number of cities in the developing world are struggling with the provision of water services. And we have seen the issue of the problems in Cape Town a few years ago, and this is here to stay. There will be many more places in the world, and in particular in Africa, facing similar and perhaps even bigger problems. So the current situation painfully revealed a range of further vulnerabilities of urban water supply and sanitation systems with the COVID crisis, in particular sanitation. And the crisis has made strikingly clear that we have to review, in a way, our understanding of urban resilience to account for an even broader range of external stressors and shocks. And thereby, we need to take a closer look at the link between the different dimensions of resilience and human health. We have to follow the logic of an integrated concept, such as the One Health approach. So water resilience is one of Germany's big priority areas. Germany's global portfolio in the area of urban climate adaptation adds up to more than 250 million euro. And we have projects in the area of urban water resilience, many, and they constitute, in fact, the biggest share of our water involvement, more than 54%. Concrete measures include the reduction of water waste and use in cities, as well as the diversification of their water sources, for instance, through expanding climate-friendly desalination practices. And there are many examples, but in the interest of time, I will not give you those examples. But beyond its bilateral portfolio, the ministry also financially supports Africa-focused World Resource Institute Urban Water Resilience Initiative with some 3 million euro. And this is to support 6 African cities which are particularly hit hard by water scarcity in their development of climate-resilient water management plans. So we are very keen to strengthen our cooperation with all of you, and with the objective to further strengthen resilient cities through resilient water management. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jürgen, for those perspectives. Really appreciate it. Now I'd like to turn to you, Franny, CEO of Southbridge Investment, and ask you, how do you see city government and national leaders thinking about financing to address water challenges, and what approaches are you seeing them use? What kind of role can an organization like Southbridge play in building up that ecosystem to address urban water resilience? Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Betsy, and thank you also for positioning the issue and raising the key elements that shape the nature of financing that is necessary in order to solve the problems. And I'm also going to pick on quite a few points that Jürgen has raised in his remarks in terms of discussing the issues that come around for people who are looking to finance solutions in the urban water resilience space. So the first thing is a typical city mayor on any given day is facing one of three challenges around water. Either there isn't enough of it, so the scarcity problem because there's been a drought, the freshwater resources are contaminated, or there has been another problem on the supply chain for fresh water, so too little water. Another problem they may face is too much water, abundance of water because there have been very heavy rains or there's been flooding, or for those cities that are coastal cities because of sea level rises and erosion of the beaches, or sometimes for the older cities, just broken pipes because the maintenance hasn't taken place and water is gushing down the street. And then they may face uncertainty of the quality of water, either because it's contaminated or the water treatment facilities and waste collection hasn't functioned properly. And what makes this worse is that the prediction made by the United Nations is that in about 25 years, so by 2045, the majority of cities would actually move from having abundant freshwater resources to having scarcity. And of course, with the challenges that we're facing even today, many cities are seeing intermittence between scarcity and abundance because of drought and floods. And of course, treating waste and water collection and supply is becoming a major challenge for many cities as they have to balance agriculture, industry, and of course, the day-to-day water needs for city residents. I wanted to layer on top of these three major disruptors that have come into this space. The first one, of course, is climate change because of the way it forces the intermittency between scarcity and abundance. But the second one is technology. We can now measure things at the nano level, at the geospatial level, or at the nodal and network level. So we can collect data and have information flowing. I was quite surprised with the data that a number of major cities were able to pinpoint exactly where there were heavy incidences of COVID-19 infections by testing the wastewater. So we've gotten to that level of complexity, knowledge, and ability to use technology at the nano, geospatial, and nodal and network scale. So that's a major disruptor, and it gives us opportunities in the financing space. And then, of course, the last one, which was totally unanticipated, is the convergence between water-related risks, which used to be only for those who have to deliver the water or those who are consuming it, to actually those who are now responsible for finance. If you look at the major banks, the funding agencies, they have had to worry about their own assets. Are they protected from floods? Do they have enough insurance? What's the future going to look like? And that sensitivity has made people in the finance sector much more aware of the opportunity and the need for innovation in financing water resilience. So I'll close with three very quick solutions and examples from Africa that show that this can actually be done in different ways. And the first one picks up on a nature-based solution. So this is the Upper Tana River catchment in Kenya, where you have competition for water between the city residents who need fresh water, the farmers who need it for irrigation, and then, of course, wildlife and forests that are also needy of water. And the solution there from a financial point of view was to go broad, to go holistic, and to develop what is known as a water fund, which can be funded through taxes, through tariffs, through grants and blended finance solutions. But the key thing is it's actually solving the problem at a nature level. The second example is what you'd call smart market-based solutions. And here it's a pity Mayor Parks is not with us, but I wanted to use the example of Johannesburg or Josie, where they went to the market to develop a green bond specifically for the challenges that Johannesburg is facing. And one of the few facts that is not very known around the world is Johannesburg has amongst the cleanest water in the world in terms of quality of tap water for drinking, because they'd invested for many years in ensuring clean water solutions. But with climate change and other urbanization factors, it's becoming very difficult to do. But they went and raised a bond over almost $150 million, which matures in 2024. So very specific and pinpoint. But they learned a lot of lessons from previous experiments and pilots by the European Investment Bank, which has been leading in this area, the World Bank, and the pension funds from countries like Sweden, who have really pushed the envelope in using the green and blue bonds as solutions for the urban water resilience. The last one I like very much because it's an inclusive finance idea. And here it's using technology and using distributed ability to finance small investments through crowdsourcing, which are grants. So you take the example of IFAD, who used that in Malawi very successfully, where people would give a Christmas gift of a grant to a small town to get its water supply. Now that has been raised to a level where people can actually do micro-investing using mobile platforms where you can actually put in $10 or $100 in equity. And the example there is Uganda. And then the last one, which is similar in this inclusive financing, is to collateralize the needs of many, many small towns and municipalities, and then offer that so that investors can take small slices of small utility financing needs. And this is an example that has been implemented in a number of cities around, but the one that is most striking to me is through the competition between counties in Kenya, again, with decentralization. So I'll stop here because I think we can have many other examples, but I just wanted to pick up on the examples that Jürgen had mentioned, and then your opening remarks to position the financing opportunities and alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Franny. Wonderful examples, and I think they point to the sort of richness of what is possible and how we can build to something much more powerful in accelerating urban water resilience across African cities. I want to thank both Jürgen and Franny for their perspectives on this issue and turn it back to Arella. Thank you again both so much.
Thank you, Betsy, and all the panelists. In Miami, we also have been dealing with water issues, but namely keeping our communities safe and dry from sea level rise and storm surge. The city of Miami is starting to invest in nature-based solutions to address these challenges, and just now started a project with the Nature Conservancy to adapt the shoreline to mitigate risks. Let's take a look.
Situated on Biscayne Bay, Miami's Morningside Park is a treasured local green space already being impacted by climate change. That's why the City of Miami is collaborating with the Nature Conservancy with support from the Chubb Charitable Foundation to redesign the park's waterfront with nature-based solutions that will help protect the park and the community just beyond it. These natural climate adaptation solutions can protect the coastline and in some cases reduce storm surge more effectively than gray infrastructure. Scientists at the Nature Conservancy have found that in some regions, a healthy coral reef can reduce 97% of a wave's energy before it hits the shore. And mangrove trees can significantly reduce wave height.
The City of Miami is proud to announce our partnership with the Nature Conservancy and Chubb Charitable Foundation. Our hope is that this project will both safeguard our waterfront and become a prototype for future green infrastructure solutions in Miami.
The Morningside Park project will use green infrastructure to reduce the risk of damage from storm surge, flooding from heavy rainfall, and shoreline erosion. It includes mangroves and an extended intertidal zone to reduce wave damage, and native vegetation to help safely manage stormwater.
Florida is at the global forefront of climate change and its impacts, and Morningside Park is a perfect example of how vulnerable our coastlines are. The Nature Conservancy is committed to protecting our coast and coastal communities through scientific research, informing policies that reduce CO2 emissions, and innovative projects like the Morningside Park Resilient Shoreline. Thanks to supporters like the Chubb Charitable Foundation and willing partners like the City of Miami, this project can demonstrate that nature is a powerful ally in mitigating and adapting to the impacts of climate change.
As a property and casualty insurer, Chubb recognizes that mitigating the growing threat of climate change requires action from government, the private sector, and society at large. Through Chubb's collaboration with the Nature Conservancy, we can help make a difference, not only in this resilience project with the City of Miami, but gain practically tested insights that can be replicated around the world in other coastal cities vulnerable to climate change.
To discuss some opportunities to accelerate the design and implementation of nature-based solutions, we have Smita Raut, the Urban Resilience Lead at WRI. Hi, Smita. Can you tell us about some of the projects that have been spurred in the year of action with support from the Global Commission on Adaptation?
Thank you, Arella. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Well, thank you for sharing that powerful example from Miami of how nature-based solutions like mangrove trees, coral reefs, and native planting are being used to address flood risks and sea level rise issues at Miami. Similarly, evidence shows that nature-based solutions are extremely effective at addressing many other climate risks like heat risks and even droughts. When combined with gray infrastructure solutions, we now know that they can not only help improve performance, but lower costs of our gray infrastructure assets. Therefore, they offer a win-win solution. The future is to invest in such hybrid gray, green, blue infrastructures so that we can adapt and mitigate at the same time, and we can create jobs, improve services, and offer amenities and provide public health benefits to our citizens. This is why we need to make nature-based solutions and such hybrid infrastructures a global adaptation priority. We strongly believe in this, and over the past year, World Resources Institute, along with many other partners from the Commission, including the Government of Canada, Mexico, the UN Environmental Program, and the Global Environmental Facility, worked together to bolster city leadership on nature-based solutions for adaptation. Going forward, we together have set up an ambitious goal of helping scale nature-based solutions in 65 cities by 2030. And we think we can do this through three key areas of action. Cities need practical tools and guidance in order to be able to adapt and develop plans for designing nature-based solutions. And we, last year, with support from a number of partners, released 3 new knowledge products, which will help cities provide practical guidance to map, value, and engage stakeholders while developing nature-based solutions, including a social equity learning guide and an urban forest learning guide. More needs to be done, but if we do more together, we can achieve this goal. The second area we think needs to be advanced further is to help advance finance on nature-based solutions. And we know that cities need both technical and financial guidance to develop better, more viable business plans for nature-based solutions. And with the Commission's support, we have been able to galvanize momentum to set up a nature-based solutions-focused project preparatory facility that will provide cities such assistance, technical assistance in early stages of nature-based solutions project design. And we hope to capitalize and launch this project preparatory facility by COP26 in Glasgow. So we look forward to that. The third action we have taken this year is we know that cities learn best from other cities. And therefore, we have recruited 12 cities who have committed to scaled action on NBS. And we are showcasing them as vanguard cities this year at the summit. And we are encouraging a dialogue between those cities, national governments, and leaders from the Commission so that we can galvanize momentum for more collaborative action between national governments, cities, and financial institutions to help scale nature-based solutions. So a lot to look forward to. And hoping to continue this work till COP26 and beyond for the decade of action. We look forward for others to join us in this effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Smita. Thank you so much. We have another great practitioner of nature-based solutions on the line, Lynn Scarlett, Chief External Affairs Officer at the Nature Conservancy, who oversees their global public policy influence and corporate engagement in over 70 countries. Lynn, what's your take on nature-based solutions and how well will they actually work in cities?
Thank you so much, Irela. As we're all acutely aware, cities face significant risks from coastal storms, extreme rainfall events, extreme heat, and other climate change impacts. And of course, enhancing climate adaptation and resilience of cities involves many dimensions, such as re-examining protective structures, enhancing emergency planning, and rethinking urban development. But climate adaptation also involves rethinking the role of nature itself. Coastal forests and mangroves, coral reefs, oyster reefs, and more can reduce risks along coast from storm surge and other impacts. And expanded tree canopy, restored wetlands and floodplains, and more permeable surfaces in cities can also enhance resilience. The underlying science of nature's benefits is extensive. The Nature Conservancy has coastal resilience tools to enhance understanding of specific natural processes and their contribution to resilience. But increasingly, we also have on-the-ground examples of investing in nature for climate adaptation in cities and elsewhere. Consider Miami and the Conservancy's partnership with the city, the video that we just saw. Our Morningside Park partnership in Miami shows how nature, for example, coastal mangroves, can cost-effectively enhance urban resilience, even in some of the most exposed locations. The project will provide climate resilience benefits against storm surge, king tides, and flooding due to heavy rainfall. There are many, many other examples, but I'm going to offer 3 touch points across the globe. We partnered in Mexico in the Yucatan Peninsula with state governments, the insurance sector, and hotel associations to protect coastal reefs there that reduce risks to coastal cities, with the first ever insurance product for coral reefs. In China, under an umbrella of sponge cities, we're working to restore natural systems in the city of Shenzhen. And in Melbourne, we're engaging in a partnership to expand urban forests and natural areas to enhance resilience, both to help against extreme storm events, but also extreme heat events. Investing in nature in cities brings climate, economic, and biodiversity benefits. But these do face some challenges, and we've heard a few of them. Many climate effects transcend jurisdictional boundaries of individual cities, and that means we need ways to support coordination across cities with tools like joint powers agreements, intergovernmental compacts, and so on. And investing in nature also often requires breaking down silos across city agencies to support integrated cross-agency planning and action, as Betsy Otto noted. And it also requires considering how to blend nature with traditional infrastructure, for example, how, where, and what is most cost-effective. Fulfilling the opportunities to invest in nature for urban climate adaptation requires a combination of science, technology, policy, and creative financing such as water funds described by Franny, or insurance products as in our Mexico example. The good news is that we're actually seeing around the globe investment in these building blocks, many of them highlighted in various of today's conversations.
Well, while nature-based solutions can be extremely effective, they're just one tool in developing a comprehensive adaptation strategy. To discuss coastal defense on a larger scale and the investments made by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, we have Dr. David Pittman, Director of the U.S. Army Engineer Research and Development Center. Dr. Pittman, can you tell us more about how the work of the Army Corps and what they do to protect coastal cities?
Thank you, Arella. Can you hear me?
Dr. Pittman. I can hear you now, Dr. Pittman. Thank you. Now I can't
Can you hear me now?
Oh, now, wait, hold on. Try again.
Can you hear me now, Arella?
Yes, I can. Welcome, Dr.
Thank
Pittman.
you so much. Sorry for the sorry for the mix-up on communications, but it's my honor to be here today on behalf of the Corps of Engineers to speak to the summit today. As you may know, the Corps of Engineers is one of the largest infrastructure agencies in the world, with 36,000 employees responsible for nearly $300 billion in water resources infrastructure around the United States, in addition to many developing military and other infrastructure projects around the world for our military. Now, we have some very serious challenges to meet with infrastructure. There have been 285 climate and weather-related disasters since 1980 in the United States alone that have produced over $1 billion in damage and disaster each. So the total across all 285 events is over $1.8 trillion with 14,000 lives lost. So that's obviously totally unacceptable. Now, developing the capacity to address these critical needs can be accelerated by developing strong collaborations and partnerships. And that's exactly what we've done. The Corps recognizes the value and need for nature-based solutions as an integral part of developing 21st century infrastructure solutions. Now, more than 10 years ago, the Corps started with our partners the Engineering with Nature initiative to develop the capacity to implement nature-based solutions across the broadest possible spectrum of infrastructure. Engineering with Nature, as many of the audience may know, is an intentional alignment of natural and engineering processes to efficiently and sustainably deliver economic, environmental, and social benefits through collaborative processes. For example, we've led a 4-year effort with more than 75 engineers and scientists across 10 countries to develop technical guidance on the use of nature-based features such as beaches, dunes, islands, wetlands, and reefs. This 800-plus page guide will be published this spring as a joint international effort. 2 years ago, we published a book entitled Engineering with Nature in Atlas. It's a beautiful book that contains 57 projects from around the world that illustrate this practice in the form of built projects. Last fall, we actually launched an Engineering with Nature podcast, which is available from Apple iTunes and the Engineering with Nature website. And this spring, we will be publishing a second volume of the Atlas with 62 more projects worldwide. Electronic copies of the Atlas are available on the Engineering with Nature website. So I believe there are great opportunities in the near and midterm to expand our collaborations and communications and accelerate our mutual capacity to deliver nature-based solutions. Thank you very much, Arella, for the opportunity to discuss them today.
Thank you, Dr. Pittman. Now I'd like to introduce 3 leaders who excel at the art of collaboration and capacity building. Mayor Mohammed Adeji Soa is Vice Chair of the Steering Committee of the C40 cities, representing African mayors, as well as serving on the board of Global Covenant of Mayors on Climate and Energy. He will be joined with Dr. Hans Gerels, a leader in hydrology, flood risk management, climate adaptation, water-sensitive urban design, and urban resilience at Deltares, and managing the urban resilience team. Finally, Dr. Eddie Moores is rector of IHE Delft Institute for Water Education and professor of water and climate at VU University, Amsterdam. Well, starting with you, Mayor Soa, what are key climate challenges that Accra faces? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, starting with you, Mayor Soa, what are the key climate change challenges that Accra faces today?
Thank you very much for having me. And I'm sorry I've joined you on my phone because I'm in the midst of a bit of a chaotic situation. There's a lot happening around and I've not been able to be stable. So apologies for that.
That's quite all right.
Thank you very much. The C40 cities collaborated with Accra, and we've been able to develop a climate action plan. But prior to that, we did an audit in Accra. There were three key areas that of much concern to us, which became a climate issue. One is waste management. We realized that 60% or 56% of our emission sources come from burning of waste in Accra. Transportation was second, and station energy coming from buildings is also third. So these are the three key sources of emission in Accra, and they are also a problem to us. For us in Accra, based on our climate action plan, we've mainstream climate issues into all development activities. So we are guided by the climate action plan in the sense that every activity that we undertake must conform with climate issues that we have outlined in it. And I must say that we launched in 2017 that wanted Accra to become the cleanest city in Africa. The intention was not just to make Accra clean, but because it's waste management, it's the main source of emissions. By so doing, we are tackling the climate issues in Accra. Let me also say that the consequence of these actions or climate issues are one, flooding. Accra experiences flooding every year, and we are currently dealing with it through adaptation by making sure that we construct huge storm drains and then dredge our water bodies as well. We've also noticed that for the past couple of decades, the temperature of Accra had gone up by 1 degree Celsius. Hence, there's a lot of heat in Accra at the moment. And our response to that is planting of trees and making sure that we green all open spaces in Accra, which of course we are also aggressively handling in Accra. And then finally, tidal waves is a big issue in Accra because our artisanal canoe fishermen go to fishing with canoe, and every year we expect waves that results in the destroy of our canoes will also be a thing of the past. But the important thing here is that we believe that every city should identify your main challenges and the sources of emissions, and see how you can vertically integrate into the national government program. Because, and that's the strategy we had employed in Accra, so that we align our activities with the national government, so that when the national government is also reporting on their NDCs, they will also capture the LDCs in the in the report. So we have managed to look at our locally determined contributions, and that has been quite helpful to us. We have done so with the success, with the support of C40 cities that has given us technical support throughout, and our ultimate aim of making Accra a resilient city has also been technically supported by the city's resilience network, formerly 100 resilient cities. They've managed to support us through technically. And then we are also working with GCOM as well. So all these groups have been able to support us to appreciate what the issues of climate change are, mainstream it into our development program, and supporting us to be able to reach out and do more and to assess what we have done so far. We We are very grateful for the support that all of them have given to us. I thank you for the opportunity that you've given to us, and hopefully I'll continue to listen to the rest of my panelists as they share their ideas. We'll learn from it, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Soa, for the amazing work that you're doing and your collaboration. My next question is for Dr. Garrels. Please tell us more about the city's Adaptation Accelerator, and I believe it contains more than just risk assessments, correct?
Yes, thank you, Irela, for providing me with the opportunity to talk a little bit more about the city's Adaptation Accelerator. So indeed, the city's Adaptation Accelerator is a growing set of tools and services to help cities with accelerating adaptation. So tools for risk assessments, like we were just discussing in Accra, are very important starting points to understand the climate-related challenges that cities face. But the accelerator is also about knowledge and tools for seizing opportunities, for identifying and designing the measures and interventions to reduce those risks and increase climate resilience. So, for example, we just heard from our previous panelists about developing blue and green infrastructure using nature-based solutions, or by developing solutions for floating urban development. So we want to bring all of these elements as knowledge and tools into the city's Adaptation Accelerator. So, and last but not least, we also develop training modules to help cities to develop integrated climate adaptation strategies for urban planning and action plans with bankable projects.
I have another question. What are your thoughts about scaling this to many more cities, and particularly involving the 1,000 cities by the end of the coming decade? That's quite challenging.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this is a very good question because, well, today we have heard from heads of states and from mayors and from the previous panelists in this city's anchoring event that this is our goal, and this is indeed a very ambitious goal, but we must do it. So that means that we must learn from every step we take, going from one city to 5 cities, and then going from 5 cities to 25, and so on. And I think it is all about cooperation with cities networks like Resilient Cities Network, C40, who bring together all those cities throughout the world where we have to work. It is also about maximum use of global data, because that will enable us to quickly analyze challenges rather than first having to assess local data. It is also about engaging very much with local communities and stakeholders, because they are the communities and the people and the citizens who can tell us what the needs are and what they think good solutions are. And it is also about capacity building in cities. So, for example, the Resilient Cities Network and Deltares started a community of practice for peer-to-peer learning on water and adaptation in cities in the framework of the GCA and Dutch government water action track. And this is a tool that helps scaling up. So together with a lot of partners, we will be able to apply the city's Adaptation Accelerator eventually in hundreds of cities in the next decade. Thank you for the opportunity to explain a little bit about this.
Thank you for joining us. My next question is for Dr. Moores. How is IHE Delft involved in capacity building programs and in the coming decades, and how are we going to accomplish it?
Thank you, Irina. IHE Delft is an organization that trains mid-career professionals from the water sector from all over the world. And as the previous speakers mentioned, there's a big need for a portal with knowledge, but also on how you can use this knowledge. And for that, you need capacity building in and with the cities. In the City Adaptation Accelerator, there's also this strong knowledge component. And together with the Technical University of Delft and the Erasmus University of Rotterdam, we have developed a new MSc specialization, which is specifically meant actually to train senior and mid-career professionals from these cities to become a future leader on adaptation and use these tools and that knowledge.
Thank you very much. Well, this group really highlighted the importance of working together and knowledge sharing in order to scale up solutions. To talk about partnerships between social movements, universities, and cities, and what they're doing to build new knowledge structures to advance climate adaptation with and for the urban poor communities, I'd like to introduce Sheila Patel. She's the chairperson of the board of Slum Dwellers International and founding director of the Society for Promotion of Area Resource Centers, who, along with World Resources Institute, Collaborative for Urban Resilience Effectiveness, also known as CURE, Resilient Cities Network, Least Developed Countries Universities Consortium on Climate Change, and International Center for the Climate Change and Development, is spearheading a unique knowledge network for inclusive adaptation. She will be joined by Dr. Murali Chandrasekharan, Vice Provost for the International University of British Columbia, and Emily Judson, a student working on a Master's of Environmental Management at the Yale School of Environment.
My name is Sheila Patel. I live in Mumbai and I am a long-term activist working with social movements of the urban poor. We have been struggling for the last many years to explore long-term sustained partnerships with municipalities, universities, and other local stakeholders in order to find solutions that work for the urban poor who need infrastructure, who need better livelihoods, need the right to be citizens in cities for a very long time. And we find that in this space of addressing the climate challenges, the process requires even more effort because disaster after disaster not only impacts cities in general, but it doubly affects the urban poor. I champion the role and the contribution of grassroots groups and social movements because working in the urban space requires long-term sustained engagement. Problems that have been intergenerationally neglected cannot be solved by 1 or 2 years projects. They require new knowledge, new technology, new partnerships to make this happen. This time of COVID has taught us that communities are very critical in addressing the issues of the unforeseen. The COVID pandemic was such an unforeseen crisis, which required people to gather together to understand what these challenges were, help poorest, link to the cities, and that along with many other challenges that the urban poor face now require new ways of addressing problems and difficulties that cities face. So these partnerships that we try to showcase through the work of the GCA's Cities Track centrally acknowledge the need for equal partnerships between knowledge providers, duty bearers in government, and the urban poor. Social movements are important because many of the needs that poor people have are considered illegal and they need to change. So here with me is Dr. Murali from the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, who coordinates the CURE network and has worked with us to explore how grassroots communities, the urban poor social movements, and students from universities, assisted by their professors, work together. And it would be interesting for you, Dr. Murali, to tell us what you see in this partnership. Because for us as social movements, this has the potential for being that long-term sustained alliance through which our global work can help more and more local universities work with local communities with the support of global networks.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm Murali Chandrasekharan, Professor and Vice Provost International at the University of British Columbia in Canada. I'm joining you today from Vancouver, where I'm privileged to live and work on the unceded, ancestral, and traditional lands of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coast Salish peoples. Over the last 5 years, faculty and students from several universities around the world have come together to curate a collaborative for urban resilience and effectiveness, CURE, a global collaborative to mobilize talent, knowledge, experience across colleges, universities, community organizations, cities, and corporates to drive inclusive climate resilience, urban prosperity, innovation, and development. We deeply believe that this work needs to be responsive to challenges facing communities. At its core, CURE is a call to action, buoyed by a deep commitment to act on the basis of humility, not hubris, compassion, not competition, and engagement, not estrangement. Building on this work over the last 5 years, we're now exploring how to scale this up to do 4 things. First, transdisciplinary pedagogy, courses where students, youth leaders will engage in meaningful projects with local partners on the ground, offering unique opportunity to understand different contexts and cultures and build skills to overcome disciplinary biases. Each project will be overseen by scholars at partner universities who will collaborate with each other to create meaningful works of research-based practice designed for broad distribution. Second, basic and responsive research, providing a platform to connect faculty and students across disciplines and universities to engage in transdisciplinary research that is fundamental and at the same time responsive to needs faced by cities and communities. Third, knowledge exchange, curation of case studies on innovations focused on resilience and effectiveness of cities, with an aim to develop an evidence-based metric system and indices to guide investment decisions. And finally, capacity development and empowerment, aimed at helping develop resilience thinking among professionals and empowering youth leaders to get switched on and shape the agenda. None of this is going to happen without broad participation and collaboration. So let me invite all of you, students, universities, resilience practitioners, city governments, and civil society organizations to support inclusive climate adaptation through alliances like these and others. But for long-term sustainability and future leadership, the key is our youth leaders. Leaders like Emily Judson, who worked this past fall with CURE on a project situated in Mukuru in Nairobi. Emily worked with Slum Dwellers International and an NGO in Nairobi, Akiba Mashinani Trust, and its leader, Jane Weru, and her team, and is now going to tell us how such work is shaping her educational priorities and future role in advancing climate adaptation. Over to you, Emily.
Thanks so much, Marley. My name is Emily Judson, and I am a Master's of Environmental Management at the Yale School of the Environment, and I was a student in the CURE Climate Resilience course this past semester. I worked on a project in Mukuru, which is an informal settlement in Nairobi, and my team was tasked with reimagining the cooking fuel system that residents of Mukuru could use instead of the current energy sources, which are all really unsustainable, hazardous, and super detrimental to public health. So through this project, I had the opportunity to work with Jane Weru and her team in understanding the problems and really learning from their firsthand experience and their experience working with all the stakeholders and the community. It was also an opportunity to work on a project that could actually be realized through Jane and her team, and just a really insightful and inspiring experience. In addition to gaining this type of global perspective through our client, we really benefited from the global virtual classroom, as well as the global team structure. My team had 4 members, one in Ghana, Mexico, Indonesia, and myself. And each member, in addition to being in a different location, was also a different discipline, different educational background. So we all had completely different approaches to both identifying problems and trying to find solutions. Working in a cross-disciplinary, cross-institutional, cross-continental team resulted in a project that really had just a much better outcome than we could have imagined. Because of all of our different perspectives and experiences, we had a much richer and more holistic investigation into the issues than we would have otherwise. It led us to ask questions that we would never have thought of before and really challenge assumptions that we had previously made. So not only was the work better, but we were also able to understand the importance of collaboration across institutions, disciplines, time zones, and different types of organizations. This lesson about looking beyond your immediate colleagues, classmates, partners, towards new types of allies is one that will be critical to addressing the climate crisis and will empower current and future leaders to accomplish really ambitious goals. So with that in mind, I would like to echo Marley's call to action. These issues are just too complex and too high stakes for institutions and other entities to be working in silos. We ask the global community of students, universities, practitioners, local governments, and other types of organizations, along with the Global Commission, to support inclusive climate adaptation through alliances like CURE and other similar initiatives. And we will look forward to working with you towards a climate resilient future.
It is great to hear interdisciplinary approaches, they have strengthened adaptation efforts and made them more inclusive. And hearing from Emily Judson just gives me so much hope about the involvement of younger generations in the climate movement. We have great youth advocates here in Miami. Most recently, they led the advocacy effort that led to Miami declaring a climate emergency. Speaking of creating change, we have one last discussion before we wrap up the Resilient Cities anchoring event, convening some major global change makers to discuss 1,000 Cities Adapt Now program and how to get to 1,000 cities. To facilitate this discussion, I'd like to now introduce Rogier Vanderberg, Director of Urban Development at World Resources Institute, and Arnaud Molnar, co-lead for the city's action track for the Global Commission on Adaptation and Chief Resilience Officer for the City of Rotterdam, who we heard from earlier. Joining them this illustrious panel includes Manu Sharif, Executive Director of UN Habitat, and Lawrence Horkin, Executive Director for the Resilient Cities Network, and Annie Daguspa, Global Director for the WRI Cities Program.
Thank you. Thank you, Arella. It's absolutely fantastic to see all the coalition partners here. And I'm very happy that this meeting happens today, where we already seen a lot of kind of on-the-ground action and solutions. We heard a lot about coordinated action and coalition, and this is where the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now program is about. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to give a lot of introduction. I actually want to kick off this roundtable of our partners of the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now program immediately. Starting with a question to Maimouna Sharif, the Executive Director of UN Habitat. And I'd like to start asking you, how can UN Habitat, as a partner of this coalition, build in a strong equity and inclusion component to the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now program and to this coalition? Welcome. I'm very happy that you're here.
Yeah, thank you very much, Roger, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends, and partners for this joint effort to accelerate the urban climate adaptation actions. So urban climate change, urban climate change action is one of the 4 pillars of UN Habitat Strategic Plan, which was approved in May 2019. Even before COVID-19, we already thought about this. And within this pillar, we have prioritized climate resilience and adaptation. So at the Climate Action Summit in 2019, you remember, we launched the Building Climate Resilient for the Urban Poor initiative in partnership with many of you. And for UN Habitat Initiative, we have the flagship program, Resilient Settlement of the Urban Poor, a Rise Up, is the key deliverable vehicles to demonstrate our conviction that resilience has to start with the most vulnerable. So I would like also to see that since the launch of the Rise Up, Roger, that at the World Urban Forum in February last year, we thought that we can move forward very fast, but unfortunately COVID-19 came in March 2020. But somehow we further laid this is the real weaknesses of the socio-economic challenges that cities, in particular the urban poor, face. So lack of access and water sanitation, health, education, in the housing infrastructure, housing condition, limited to food security, education, and technology. So UN Habitat actually quickly incorporated COVID-19 emergency response somewhere in April 2020 in 13 projects and to in our community to climate change and slum upgrading project. So from this thing we heard just now, WASH initiative been already put up very successfully in Kibera, in Matare, in Gitogoro, in Kenya, in Ghana, in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Myanmar, food security, and also a livelihood initiative in Bolivia, in Fiji, and Philippines. So I think this short-term action directly supported 5 million people. So I think this is very important for us to work together with the urban poor, to work together with the community, and to work together with you, with all of you, to really support the United Nations Secretary General policy notes on COVID-19 in an urban world, where UN Habitat is the one is the pen holder of this. And also we managed to launch our UN Habitat World Cities Report and the Cities and Pandemic series. So Roger, to conclude that we have tools to achieve a green, fair and resilient recovery, but we need to do it in integrated approach and accelerate the response to COVID-19 and the climate crisis. So we believe that in particular, slum and informal settlement upgrading, broad resilience support to urban poor are means to this end. So I think this is important to leverage the strength and the coalition members and city network, urban resilient initiative that work together within this space to ensure that technical and financial capacities for action, as well as monitoring and global reporting are available. So UN Habitat will also use our convening power to ensure local climate action receive the attention needed by the national government. So we need to look into the implementation of the new urban agenda to achieve the 17 SDG, especially the SDG 11. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maimouna Sharif, for this address. Over to you, Arna.
Yeah, thank you, Rogier. And thank you, Maimouna, for representing UN Habitat. As you're showing great leadership, and I think all the other partners also can admit how important it is to have you on board in this coalition of the 1,000 Cities Can Adapt Now program. So let's us move to Lauren. She has been waiting for a while already. I know her time zone is quite inconvenient, so I will rush a little bit up, Lauren. So you as Executive Director of the Resilient Cities Network, of which Rotterdam is really a proud member, you of course can help us with the answer on the question, what do you think peer-to-peer learning opportunities and knowledge sharing between cities, how can this build and help the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now program? Lauren, up to you.
Thank you, Arnaud, and good very early morning from Singapore. Despite the hour here, I cannot think of an event that's deserving of more rapt attention. So to answer the question that you've asked, how practical collaborations take shape, how this is impactful, we have to keep a few truths in mind. And that is that, as we've heard all night or all day for some, climate change can be addressed. Adaptation has technical solutions to protect people. They're out there, and most cities are facing common challenges. The second is that there are enough funds to address current adaptation needs, but they need to be targeted. The right solutions need to be targeted to the right challenges. And then third, climate adaptation is very different than mitigation. Both are equally urgent, but if we emit more from a building or we emit less, we can't see it. But adaptation has a face. And it's that family or that entire neighborhood in your city that's living at the water's edge, right? That could have their home swept away. Or it's the elderly people in your community who could die of heat stroke if they don't have access to a cooling space. So because climate change adaptation has a face, the solutions have to come from trusted sources. Adaptation is about people and is about doing what we do best as people, which is to adapt. So we have to go through our trusted networks, and the water work that was mentioned on the former panel is actually a great example, because this is work that our cities is doing with WRI in Africa. We're building on work that was done in Cape Town around day zero. We did this with Arup and the Resilience Shift once before, and now we're able to share that through the network, through Chief Resilience Officers, and replicate that work and scale it up. Similarly, when knowledge happens and transfer happens between trusted networks, it can happen very fast and it can happen very effectively. So if you walk down the street today in Surat in India, you will see water plazas that capture water, and those were built are now by your team and Dutch engineers working with Surat's engineers to help them build flood resilience, because they saw how that worked in Rotterdam and they adapted it for local conditions. So we can achieve that kind of scale and speed when we work through trusted networks. And now COVID-19 poses a challenge to all of this, right? Because we can't go to places and see with our own eyes. So we have to do a lot more of this virtually. And we do that in Resilient Cities through communities of practice, the water community that Dr. Gerels mentioned in the last panel. And just over the past few months, Chief Resilience Officers from New York, Sydney, The Hague, Tel Aviv, Chennai, just to name a few, in a community of practice on urban heat, were able to protect vulnerable communities in these cities without them even knowing it, because they shared experiences virtually and online. So we can do so much more of this together within this platform. So I am literally staying up all night to pledge our renewed support to work with our partners here, the Global Center on Adaptation, World Resources Institute, UN Habitat. It's so wonderful that you're here, Maimuna, UNDRR, UCLG, ICLAI, C40, the Arsh Rockefeller Resilience Center, who have the solutions already that can reach 300, then the next 700 cities with real and personalized support. So I want to reach out as I close this message to all those listening today. Practical collaboration is just that. It's practical. It's not a domain only of experts. So Adapt Now requires that we mobilize citizen action on the ground, and that those of you listening on the call or listening later, if you're watching this on video, you can be the face of resilience as we work together to go from 100 to 1,000 and then to the 10,000 cities worldwide that really need to adapt to climate change. So this issue is bigger than all of us, and we must be this platform to create the most audacious, science-based and results-oriented coalition that the world has ever seen. And I believe that with this founding group of partners, that is not only possible, but it's essential. Our future depends on it. So let's pick up the pace of this work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lauren. These were kind of great positive words on helping, and we really have appreciated your continuous efforts to work with the coalition partners to shape this project, this program, with a lot of, as you say, concrete actions on the ground. I'm moving to Arnoud. Arnoud, you're not only my co-lead of the Cities Action Track. Thanks for that and your energy over the last year. But you're also a city official. You are the Chief Resilience Officer of the City of Rotterdam, and you have helped embed resilience in the City of Rotterdam. So what do you think are the key capacity building needs and the ways to scale impact in cities?
So thank you, Rogier. And yes, again, I think the audience also is allowed to know that it's really a pleasure to work with you. And it are crazy times because we just met for the second time live, and the last time was a year ago. And that's what COVID is doing to us. So I will keep it short, Rogier, because we are running out of time, I know. What I would like to express is the experiences that we built up in Rotterdam regarding adaptation is really about, you could say, a holistic approach. And so we were able to develop an overall integrated climate adaptation strategy. And we think that's an important fundament for all cities, because with this strategy in hand, you are able to design a climate adaptation plan for the short term. And with this plan, that's important because you can decide when, where, what kind of measures you have to take. At the same time, it's also crucial just not to wait when you have a strategy, but also to start right away with what we call no regret measures. And there it comes with innovative solutions like the multifunctional solutions, like the water plazas in Rotterdam, and there are more other examples. And finally, my last remark on this one is it becomes more and more important to invest in inclusive adaptness. And so adaptation. So in Rotterdam, we used to say that we were working on adaptation for citizens and then with citizens, but now it's also done by citizens. And so to include the citizens in your adaptation plans is crucial. And that's, I think, we can include in the capacity building to help other cities. Now, I also can take over and go straight away to Ani for a question regarding the importance of coalitions. Dear Ani, it's the first time that we met, but I heard a lot about you via Rogier. Could you tell us about the importance of coalitions in accelerating adaptation in cities? And maybe you can also give some examples the WRI is working on, because you're, what I understand, part of several coalitions on this topic.
Thank you, Arno. And first of all, thank you very much for the collaboration with you in Center for Global Adaptation the last whole year and this event. It's a pleasure to be on the stage with Maimouna and Lauren. I think we have heard today already from many mayors, Mayor Suarez and others, that adaptation is about protecting people. And what we need to do now is protect people at scale. That's why the 1,000 Cities Declaration is so important. And scale can only happen through coalition. Scale can happen when you bring a local leader like Mayor Suarez and others. You heard from a lot of mayors today. Communities, as Sheila talked about. But with that, you need to bring practices, as Lauren just said. There are many good practices across the world that's already happening. There's great energy in cities. Across cities learn best from each other. So you bring that knowledge at the right place at the right time, because every solution on the ground is different. There is no generic solution. You bring the solutions together, you bring the best science possible to cities to craft solutions together, and then you bring the finances together. So this mix that is required in every place, in every 1,000 place, one at a time, is what a coalition can deliver. And that is what we are here together. And I just want to mention two things. That's why at the Ross Center that I work with Rogier is we have devoted our core strategy to build such coalition and help build coalition with our partners. You'll hear from many people from that. One of the examples of it, Mark Watts from C40 is going to speak just afterwards, that 5 years back, we put together a Coalition for Urban Transition with many partners. Some of them are here to bring the national policies together. There's a 50 organizations working together, delivering global and local solutions. When we started working in adaptation with the Global Center last year, we created a similar solution with Maimouna there, Patrick there, Mark with C40 was there to launch the basic work of what key solution we should be championing. The solution that you're hearing from now of nature-based solutions, of community, focusing on poorer community, on water, came from that collaborative work. So Arno, for us to go from where we are to the scale we need to go, we need to bring our community together with city leaders. So the city solutions and finances are there for every city to build customized solution that is required for every city from the global knowledge that's growing. Thank you, Arno.
Thank you very much. We're now inviting knowledge and support partners that can help us scale, that can help this kind of core coalition of partners get to scale. And I first want to give the floor to Amanda Eichel. She's the Executive Director of the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. Amanda, I'm very pleased that you're here, and would like to hear how you consider the role of GCOM in scaling adaptation in cities and supporting this coalition as a knowledge partner. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Rogier. It's really great to be with you all today and to represent the more than 10,000 cities and the city network partners who are part of our Global Covenant of Mayors Coalition. All of those 10,000 cities have made a commitment not only to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, but also to adapt to climate change. And we're hoping that these existing, but also hopefully new commitments that may come through the Race to Resilience can also connect into programs like the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now program that you have announced today. I think this is critical because we know that right now the levels of technical assistance that are activated in regions around the world are not nearly sufficient to meet the need. And these commitments, while they are very ambitious, cannot be achieved without significant investments in technical assistance resources and partnerships like the ones we see around the room today, but also at different levels of government across and between levels of government, businesses, and other partners. And that's why with our global initiatives for the Global Covenant of Mayors, we've really focused on mobilizing resources. And resource mobilization can sometimes be shorthand for financial investment, and that is definitely critical. But there are other resources where there are also significant gaps and that cities need in order to achieve their ambition. And today we're really focused on that gap related to access to data, as well as science and technological innovation. Cities need sound, reliable, accessible data to make the policy relevant decisions about what measures to take, but also to get a solid understanding of the impact, the cost, the likelihood of success. And then once they actually make the decision to take on a particular intervention, to be able to track and measure that progress, to give confidence to their citizens, to investors, and also to our broader international community. And so we have a number of initiatives underway with some of the partners around the room with C40. We're looking at how to bring more tools and resources to cities. With the World Bank, we recently launched the City Climate Finance Gap Fund, which maybe Same will speak to a little bit more, to really mobilize early stage resources to develop investment ready concepts. And then with WRI, in a multi-year development of the city's data portal, which is a resource that really serves as a data library for cities to answer questions related to, right now, their greenhouse gas emissions impact and to consider potential actions. And that is a tool which we're really excited to think about how to expand into the adaptation and resilience space, and where we think that there is a real need and opportunity to collaborate with partners like the ones here today. And really just hope as we continue to move forward that we find the ways to align these many and growing number of initiatives, all of which are great to see, and we're very enthusiastic about the proliferation of so much in this space. But there is such an opportunity and need to align our intentions and our resources for greater impact and for greater alignment within the city space. So thanks again for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for this address. I want to move forward and giving Mark Watts, the CEO of C40, the floor. And how does the 1,000 Cities Adapt Now program align with other global resilience efforts, for example, the Race to Resilience, and how you consider C40 in supporting scaling this? I have to say to everyone here, we are very short on time. I'm very sorry, we had a huge lineup. So I'm already happy that you kept your remarks short. So also for the next speakers, please keep that in mind. Mark.
Sure, thanks, Roger, and a big thanks to Timo Suarez also for co-hosting this event and being such an engaged leader. I mean, I think to get straight to your question, the thing we're all aligning around this year is that when we get to COP26 in November, we need to see a coalition that's so big, so broad, so strong that no state leader will be able to leave Glasgow without having felt that pressure, the pressure to deliver unambiguously on the Paris Agreement, to kickstart a green and just recovery from COVID, that really builds the foundations of resilience everywhere. And I think what we see in C40 is that our cities have really got one eye on trying to contain the climate crisis or simultaneously coping with the COVID pandemic. You can see that from the 17 million inhabitants in Istanbul currently fearing that they're going to run out of water, as has happened in other cities like Chennai, whilst coping with the COVID crisis. And I think those, two things together, COVID and climate, really shows how ultimately bound together we are. our collective strategy has got to build a prosperous world for all, leaving no one behind, or we all lose. And that's what the Race to Zero, the Race to Resilience campaigns are about. The goal is to get thousands of cities committed to inclusive and resilient climate action in line with 1.5 degree target of the Paris Agreement by the time we get to COP26. And I'll finish just saying there's lots of things that cities can compete on, but cutting emissions, eliminating COVID, or building resilience to climate breakdown. Collaboration is the only route to success that we know. It really feels like we've turned a corner on international commitment to climate action in recent months, but we're way behind on building climate resilience. So let's change that at COP26. And I'm really glad that this event today has been a big part of starting that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Moving to Sama Awaba, the Global Director for Urban Disaster Risk Management, Resilience and Land Global Practice at the World Bank. In the coming years after the pandemic, a green economic recovery will be front and center to national policy. And how can this coalition contribute to enhancing these global investment opportunities for cities? And how you look at the role of the World Bank? This is a big question. I know it's very short on time to answer it, but Sama, the floor is yours. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Rohir. And really, I mean, cities have been totally at the forefront of COVID-19. And, you know, when we look at our estimates in terms of the impact on poverty, we're talking about 175 million people globally that will be falling into poverty as a result of the pandemic, and about 73 million people into extreme poverty. And most of them are living in cities. So as we get ready for thinking about recovery, there's a great and unique opportunity to really put in place the policies and the investments that could reduce emissions, that could increase cities' resilience to climate change and to natural hazards, making the cities, you know, greener, cleaner, more resilient, and more sustainable. But that obviously will require changes on cities' behalf in terms of the way they approach risk, the way they approach planning, and it will require lots of resources from multiple sources, technical expertise, and also strong institutions. Now, on the financing front, I mean, cities will need better own source revenues, but also mobilization of private capital, a situation that will be complicated because obviously COVID-19 and lockdowns have had an impact on their balance sheet and they're deteriorating. Now at the World Bank, I mean, we are heavily invested into climate mitigation and investment, with the largest multilateral funder of climate investment, with over $83 billion over the past 5 years. And in fact, in 2020, 52% of our investments, the climate co-benefits, went to adaptation. And in December, we've announced even more ambitious target. Now, there are two main, if you will, instruments that the World Bank can bring forward, if you will, to the coalition. 2017, our City Resilience Program committed to help cities build a resilient future, both on scaling up planning and access to finance. And through it, we've worked with cities such as Beira in Mozambique, Dakar in Senegal, and Accra in Ghana on scaling up basically their resilience and protection against floods, and climate adaptation with planning, infrastructure investments, regulation, and nature-based solutions. The Climate Finance Gap Fund, the City Climate Finance Gap Fund that Amanda mentioned, we work together with GCOM, with the European Investment Bank, the governments of Germany and Luxembourg, again, to transform ideas into, advance them into finance-ready projects on both low carbon and resilient development, and then with technical assistance to support on putting cities on the path of credit worthiness. Now, obviously, we will need a lot of collaboration with other organizations and partnerships. And in this regard, we very much welcome the 1,000 Cities Can Adapt Now program to collaborate, and we stand ready to work together to help advance this mission, our mission to advance city resilience and adaptation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sama, for this address. I'm going to the last speaker of this substantial part, Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, the CEO of the GEF and Commissioner of the Climate Commission on Adaptation. Warm welcome to you. And I would really like to ask you how you consider the GEF's role as a knowledge partner with its integrated approach in the context of this coalition and partnership. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Roger, and hi to everybody. Really happy to be able to participate in today's event. And let me tell you that I've been extremely impressed by the ambition, the strong commitments, and the depthness of the messages of the mayors. Definitely, we got a groundswell movement in our favor, and I tend to believe that we will be able to be on track on the many different goals and targets in the incoming decade. I got three messages or three ways to answer your question, 30 seconds each one. The one is on the need of integrated approaches. And as you all know, cities are natural integrated with interconnected infrastructure, interdependent sectors. So integrated land use and infrastructure planning is key to building climate resilience. And adopting an integrated approach will enable cities to target system changes related to the economy or environment and human well-being, like urban sprawl and loss of nature for the long-term resilience. This will require a city to function beyond silos and adopt the regional, the urban, rural, forest planning approaches to avoid trade-offs, build complementary resilience, and achieve resilience at the scale that we needed. The second point is that protection, restoration, and management of wetland forest protected areas has shown strong evidence of protecting cities from flooding and also tackling water scarcity from droughts. So acting proactively, building nature-based infrastructure, as it was mentioned throughout the whole morning, such as rebuilding wetlands, working on urban forests, green spaces, and combined green, gray, blue infrastructure not only makes cities resilient to climate change streams, but also deliver significant economic and social benefit. And it is not surprising that nature-based solution in the context of adaptation has gained such a strong momentum over the last few years. And I commend GCA's work on this to mobilize vanguard cities who will inspire other cities globally. The adaptation gap report of UNEP also certainly highlights the importance of bridging the overall adaptation gap. And my key last message has to do with partnerships. And so cities, networks, and knowledge platforms like C40, Resilient City Networks, global component of majors, and GF Global Platform for Sustainable Cities are playing a vital role in bringing various cities together and creating knowledge to facilitate the exchange of policies, ideas, and experience of sustainability approaches. North-South, as well as South-South collaboration within cities can facilitate innovation and translate resilience to ambitious goals and targets into practice and investment. So I'm really pleased that the GF is contributing to the global resilient effort throughout its integrated approach, which is informed by what cities and environment needs by 2030 and beyond, and catalyze action for today. I want to congratulate all mayors that has been behind the launching of the 1,000 Cities Adaptation Program in collaboration with GCA, WRI, UN Habitat, Resilient Cities Networks. And I'm pleased to confirm GF support to this initiative as a knowledge partner, linking the initiative with our Sustainable Cities in Climate Change Adaptation Program, which focus on highly vulnerable, least developed nations. Thank you so much, Roger.
Thank you very much, Carlos, for these words. We have been running over time, and I have to close this session. This is a start of a new coalition, a new conversation. I'm very happy for the positive and encouraging words, but also for the actual actions that have been that came to the table in this session and in the conversation with you all. I'm moving back to Irela. for the closing of this session. Thank you all for being part of this roundtable. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, Arnaud and Rogier, for such an amazing discussion, and all of the panelists, mayors, and everyone who participated today. It's key and critical that in order to gain global resilience across the world, we need to collaborate and invest and continue all the actions that we will take with all these 1,000 resilient cities. With that, I would like to thank you all for joining us in the Climate Adaptation's anchoring event from Miami on resilient cities. And I would like to thank our partners, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the Global Commission on Adaptation, and the World Resources Institute. Thank you again for indulging us, and hope to see you soon. That was like